See, what America wants to do when it comes to the five permanent members, America hopes to put a puppet in the Kremlin, like a Yelts, or may I say a Yeltsin. See, because the three permanent members basically trickle down permanent members of this world sole superpower, America. America wants a Yeltsin or a Yelts, a puppet in the Kremlin. And then to make it under, to make the three members, permanent members, into a four permanent member group. And then they want to pivot to Asia and have Taiwanese politicians overtake the Chinese Republic in order to prop Western puppets. And thereby, America will control the five permanent members with impunity as a world sole superpower. That is America's foreign interests. That's how America is using the Quad members to destroy themselves over American foreign affairs in the hopes that America can stay back with their Navy ships from the Pentagon and sail in at the last moment when everything is in ruins after the Quads in World War III, when all of Asia will be in ruins with the Quad members fighting for us because we whisper sweet nothings into their ears in order for them to turn against each other like a battle warrior fighting in a WWF wrestling match. While the announcer, or may I say America, stays in the commentary table. So that's an analogy. What America wants to do with Quads. Let them fight over themselves, let them destroy their regions, and we'll come in with our Navy ships and we'll sail into that region and pick up the pieces for pennies on the dollar. Because that's our economical sphere of influence. So we use the Four Eyes to spy on China, and then we depend on sweet nothings into the Quad members for they can turn and fight like a battle warrior. While we stay on the sidelines like commentators in our commentator booth. And then, when everything is done, we announce ourselves as victors and colonize the whole of Asia again for pennies on a dollar after World War III is completed. So in order to do that, what America wants to do as a world hegemonic sole superpower, you gotta understand there's five permanent members. America is at the top as a world sole superpower because Britain is underneath. You know, Britain is a former gone empire. Their island is the only colonies that they really have left. Even Ireland is trying to annex themselves from the United Kingdom. So it's a shrivel up empire that belongs in that peninsula or that little island. Is not really has no leverage on the world stage. But it still serves the interests of America as a veto power within the three permanent Western powers. And then France, also France doesn't have no leverage like America has. So they do the bidding of America's foreign affairs as three permanent members of the United Nations Council. But America has it in their ambitions to one day prop up a Yeltsin, or may I say a Yutz, as the leader in the Kremlin that is a puppet for Washington. So there goes. America doesn't have no more three. Now they have four permanent members that America leads with impunity. Now they want to pivot to Asia, America, and use fake intels of Four Eyes to force the Quads to battle warrior with themselves, while the Pentagon and America stays back with their ships. And at the last minute, when everything is done, when the whole region is in ruins, then we'll sail in like MacArthur's with pipes, you know, acting like sailors, finding a new world, or may I say, new opportunity zones of colonies, economical influence of America's dominance in the Asian Pacific. So America wants to quad China in and use Taiwanese puppets to topple the mainland of China and put these Taiwanese politicians in charge of the mainland. And now America has impunity, 5 permanent members underneath their wing as a world sole superpower. And America refuses to let every other nation on earth sit down as permanent members. So you have the Secretary General that doesn't have no authority to govern that body of the United Nations because he has no right to veto the monopoly of America as a veto power as a permanent member. So the Secretary General cannot do his job. He's gagged and bound and has no authority to out veto the three permanent members, mainly America as a world sole superpower. So he's just there as a secretary. You can think of him as a regular secretary working in a white collar office high rise building. He's there to just answer calls, fetch the coffees, answer, take messages for this white, or may I say, the right of America's imperialism. Conservative right of America controlling the world stage. The Secretary General is just a secretary. He's there to answer calls, take messages, maybe fetch coffee, but he has no authority. Because in this board member corporation, it's America as a CEO on the world stage. And when all the nations yearn to be equal shareholders and sit with veto power to represent their interests in this table of global order, America refuses. It's a monopoly. It's only America first, the world last. Like it's some type of Western liberty. Not to mention, you ever heard about Trump's crypto? Huh. The ironic satire of that me jazzing that term into their faces, poking fun at their satires. So this is America's foreign affairs agenda, to take out China and Russia, to have a monopoly of the 5 member states. The only way to do it, America figures, is to put a Jets, a Putz, a flunky like Yeltsin inside of the Kremlin. A puppet that will be willing to do anything the White House tells him to do. So there goes from 3 veto powers, now you have 4 veto powers if America gets to fulfill its ambition of taking out their rivals as 2 veto powers, which is Russia and China. So America is ever looking to pop up a Yelts or a Jets or a puppet in the Kremlin. So now they can pivot to Asia and concentrate on their next target. America tried to split Vietnam into South Vietnam like they did the Koreas. Or they split Taiwan off of the mainland. Because America is good at that, divide and conquer. So now with Quad intelligence that ran through CIA propaganda of Washington Foreign Affairs to fool the Quad into thinking, the Four Eyes, like there's some type of intellectual persons of organizations of intel agencies between the four-eyed intels of foreign governments. Like, we're so smart, we wear glasses. Let's call us the Four Eyes. And we're going to quad the first island chain for the Chinese not to even sell off. And to the well yonders of their own coastal shores. Let's quad them in. Better yet, let's get them to fight each other and destroy themselves in their regions. And we'll stay peacefully unscorned, unhit within our shores. And then we'll send our ships, like with General MacArthur's, to go in there riding high. And we'll recolonize those regions as our sphere of economical influence. We can re-indoctrinate all their Asian sweatshops to prop up our world reserve currency. And better yet, we can prop up the puppet Taiwanese politicians to now govern the mainland of China. That means America is fully controlling the 5 permanent members with impunity within the United Nations Permanent Council. Now America is fulfilling their dreams and ambitions, now have pure totalitarian rule of those 5 permanent members. Now it became a true monopoly. And America refuses to let the secretary do nothing but fetch their coffees as Secretary General. While he tries to evolve the United Nations to adapt to the 21st century needs, they treat him like a secretary just to take messages on behalf of America or the may I say the 3 permanent members, or really it's America as a world superpower. And they treat Secretary General like he's some type of personal secretary just to act the role. While the board members, meaning the 3 permanent members, or may I say just America by itself as a world superpower, controls the world order. So you start to see Washington behind closed doors, services arms committees, foreign relations committees, foreign intel committees. And this is what they set in motion when it comes to them dominating the American empire globally. And the only thing that stands in their ways is these 2 countries, Russia and China. So yes, America wants to pop up and prop up a Jets, a Putz, a Nimbaland, really. You know, it was sad to see Yeltsin go away with his drunkenness, comatose drunkenness, be removed from power, because America was really hoping that that was their American chance to rule as 4 veto powers permanently. Because then they wanted to pivot to China and use Taiwanese politicians to become the presidents of the mainland. And now America has permanently 5 solid members that America can wheel and deal globally as it feels fit to do. Why they treat the Secretary General like he should be wearing a skirt and a dress. And why he's there righteously trying to evolve the United Nations to deal with poverty, to deal with wars, to deal with peace, to deal with global warming, they treat him like he's nothing more, nothing less than a private secretary that's there just to fetch their coffees. Meaning America as a world superpower. So you start to see the corruptness of America's agendas globally. And if I'm saying anything out of line, if I'm saying anything out of step, if I'm being out of step, if my tongue is being too sharp, well, I always say I have nothing to hide, and I definitely don't have hairs in my tongue. I'm not here to praise y'all with hyperboles. I'm here to say it how I see it. So I'm trying to tell America to remove your ambitions from the world stage and let every nation have their equal place at the table. That ambition that you have of having a monopoly on the 5 permanent members to rule the world with impunity, that has to go. Your Washington pagan constitutional belief and manifest destiny when it comes to hypocritical oaths, when y'all swear yourselves in as politicians and behind closed doors of Congress and the Senate Foreign Arms Committee, Services Arms Committee, Ways and Means Committees, Intel Committees, y'all plot internationally to manifest destiny of your absolute power, which is absolute corruption on the world stage. Run amok. And America, as the world superpower, acts like it has a crown on its head. While the assembly reminds me that they analyze the assembly like a house of common folks, of peasants, underneath a crown of providence. Like the assembly doesn't have the right as peasants, or may I say common folks, to sit at the table as permanent members of the Security Council. because America has a crown on their head. So doesn't this sound like self-serving righteousness? Self-serving righteousness. When the rest of the world, or may I say the third world, are treated like common folks, or may I say peasants. So you start to see the imperialism of this republic of the founding fathers, the Buccaneers, or may I say the Constitution of pagan Washington. You know, they asked Washington, would you rather have a republic or a monarchy? And supposedly, from what I heard, Washington says a republic. But in reality, their egotism is a kingdom if they can keep it. As far as the United Nations. So in this imperial Roman imitation of Yankee Doodle on the world stage, when they look at the world as their oyster, their pearls on their crowns, of the founding fathers, Buccaneers, the American frontiers. And when they ask this pagan deity of George Washington, would you want a republic or a kingdom? Or he says, a republic is I can keep it. But hypocritically, behind these senatorial Roman imitators in Washington and Congress as the House of Peasants, they really mean a kingdom if they can keep it on the world stage as a world soul, indispensable world soul superpower. Under that revolves around this pagan George Washington monument overlooking the White House. To not let the assembly members of the third world sit down at the table with their equal place at the table because they're like the house of common folks, of peasant third world serfdoms under righteous providence of a crown, or may I say the founding fathers, of this grand experiment that we called the New World. Under this union that we grandstand from the laws of the open seas to the League of Nations to the United Nations under one crown that we call Washington, D.C. So I will have to ask the House of Common Serfdoms, the House of Peasants, the House of the Third World United Nations Assembly members to rise up as peasants and all hail the Washingtonian Constitution of pagans on the world stage and their providence of manifest destiny of the founding fathers in that Mount Rushmore, Capitol Hill of imitators trying to emulate the Roman Empire on a global stage of the 21st century. They don't wear togas, they wear cheap three-piece suits in the Senate of America. But have no doubt that they're trying to emulate a bygone empire in the 21st century. So when the United Nations Assembly are nothing but serfdoms of peasants of the third world that are not allowed to be represented equal, let alone be set at the table of nations, we all realize that this United Nations belongs to one providence of one pagan occult of one nation's hypocrisies.